Fatima, the country, as far as I'm concerned, is awash with money. 12 trillion rands here on the stock exchange, right? Yet, many South Africans feel poorer and we have a high unemployment rate. What is it that we're doing wrong in South Africa with so much money floating around?
I think there's the endogenous and exogenous factors. So we must accept the fact that South Africa is a commodity-based country. We've had a commodity super cycle. We came out of a surplus and now have gone into a deficit. In the periods of a surplus, did we exercise fiscal austerity as such? And we were in a period now where we're sitting in a current account deficit. So we have a current account deficit, high rates of unemployment. An emerging market economy that's impacted by what's happening globally as a result of the challenges in the developed markets and the low interest rate environment. So those are the external factors where we're part of the Fragile Five, and that impacts us as an emerging market. But internally, we have our own challenges. And I think that our own challenges internally is, one, Eskom, it's an issue. It's impacting the performance of our economy, it's impacting the growth of our economy, and if the growth of our economy is impacted, we're not going to have job creation. So we need an inclusive solution that's jointly between government, labour and the private sector to say South Africa is in a dire need of solutions to uplift and bring the economy back to levels of prosperity that we last saw maybe 7 years ago.
And you also have the big question on the issue of economic transformation. Many people are concerned that there's a slow pace of economic empowerment in this nation. What's your sense of what's going on here on the stock exchange?
My sense is that after 21 years, we've achieved very little in terms of economic transformation in South Africa. And even though we've made some form of prescription through the financial sector charters, through the various codes, through the DTR generic codes, we haven't achieved the level of transformation that we should have achieved, because in many cases with the private sector, and particularly with foreign companies playing in South Africa, it's become a tick box approach. So we need a seriousness coming from the Department of Trade and Industry, together with the private sector, to say that this is not a tick box approach, and we need to force the prescription in a way that's not forceful yet achieving the types of change that we need to see coming through. So hopefully the new sector codes will achieve that goal that we're seeking to achieve.
Very briefly, I mean, why should the private sector be forced to transform? Where are the incentives? Many business people would say, you know, we don't think it's relevant or necessary for us to up the pace of transformation.
Well, the private sector is generating all of its wealth from the South African people. So naturally, it has an obligation, if it plays in our market and it wants to, the South African consumer and other South African companies and government itself, to procure services, because the private sector procures a lot of services from government institutions. I mean, government spends billions per annum towards the private sector. It has an obligation to the people of South Africa to do the right thing. Business must do the right thing.
Thanks very much, Fatima.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Much appreciated.